for me to just jump in here, Felipe, and just walk through some of the
Well,
questions that we received?
before we dive in, I want to mention that this AMA session is expected to last around 35 minutes, and the questions we'll be addressing today were sent in advance by the members here. As we have limited time and many questions, we won't be able to take any new ones during the event. So we'll try to cover as many insightful queries as possible, and I can actually make the questions for you if that's suitable.
Oh, look, I'm happy to go through them myself. So thanks for that, Felipe. And look,
right.
we've had a huge number of questions come in. What Felipe has done is really condensed those down. There was obviously a lot of duplication with all those questions, and so I think I've got in front of me, thanks to Felipe, a good account of all the questions that have come through. There's a huge number of these. Look, a number of them are questions that we've covered a number of times before. So I'm gonna sort of leave those to last if we've got time to cover them. But there's more than 20 questions here that I'm going to try and cover in this session, and obviously that means I have to move quickly. So on that basis, I'm just going to sort of zoom through these in no particular order, and see if we've got any time towards the end to cover some of the questions that I know that we've covered in the past, and indeed some of those that I'll talk about up front we have already talked about, but I think they're important. So let me dive in straight up from the top. So the first question was, it referred to my presentation on the 18th of July. For anyone that recalls, that presentation was the presentation where we presented the details around the first deal. And the question was around, we announced that the first deal would not be tokenized. And the question is, what's the reason for that? So it's a good question. So the reason for that is that tokenizing as part of an equity crowdfunding capital raising adds 2 or 3 areas of complexity that we just felt were best left until the first deal is behind us. It's really important that these 2 critical layers in our technology stack, being the application layer and the transaction layer, it's really important that we focus on validating those with this first deal across all of the partners. And there's a huge amount of work to make sure that runs smoothly, which we're feeling really good about and very confident about. So we fully expect that will run to plan. But what we didn't want to do is layer on additional complexity for the first deal. And so that's why the decision was taken. And I'll give you a quick example. When we're tokenizing shares, we start to get into complexity around things like custody. And the reason for that is that tokenizing a share is considered a security in most regulated markets. And so in order to hold a security on someone's behalf, which is called custody, you've got to hold certain authorizations from local regulators. You've obviously got to have certain technology purpose-built to provide all of that. So there's complexity in all of that. So that's the kind of thing that we wanted to come back to with the first deal or the first couple of deals behind us, so that we're not creating too high a risk profile too early on in the use of the platform. So hopefully that answers that question. We got a number of questions here about the first deal itself. And this was an interesting question. It was really just an example type question that said, look, for the second deal, would it be, for example, a UK-based electric car charging startup company? Is that the kind of thing that could be the next deal going through the Dacxi chain? And the answer is absolutely. It's precisely the kind of investment opportunities that are typically available through licensed equity crowdfunding platforms. And of course, what we're doing is we're creating a network of those platforms that allows an equity crowdfunding platform that sits in one market to expose that deal and the opportunity to invest in that deal to the investors that sit on a different platform in a different market, and vice versa across the network in any combination. So these are exactly the types of deals. They're typically early stage businesses looking for growth capital. They're innovation driven, and their valuation is a reflection of the value they create through solving problems, and that really is what innovation is. So look, there's going to be lots of exciting opportunities for people to invest in beyond the first deal as a registered user of any of our partners' equity crowdfunding platforms. And I think, as we've said before, there's going to be a lot more information coming very soon about all of that and how you can get involved. And we'll provide that all in plenty of time before the first deal goes live. And so that leads me nicely to this next question, which is, can you assure us that any UK partner would be announced in time for the UK residents to participate? The answer is absolutely, 100%. So I can reassure everybody that that if we were to make an announcement about a UK partner, then that would be done well and truly in advance of the investment window opening, and everyone would have plenty of time to get into position to participate. Okay. I've got another question here, which is curious. What's the difference between Wealth 99 and Dacxi Coin? I'm going to cover this really quickly because I'm hoping this is probably understood by most people. So Wealth 99 is a wealth platform that provides a curated catalogue of investable assets, including cryptocurrencies and commodities and precious, such as precious metals, where individuals can accumulate over time a portfolio of investments. Dacxi Coin is a transaction currency that's used to power the Dacxi chain network. Okay, we've talked about the use case before. There's a question coming up in relation to that that'll give me the chance to cover that again. But the difference between Wealth 99 and Dacxi Coin is hopefully quite obvious. One is a wealth platform, a wealth company. The other is a transaction currency that's used inside the Dacxi chain network. So I think that's probably clear for most people by now. Another question, can investors in a country without a crowdfunding platform invest in Dacxi chain through this first deal that we've announced? The answer is yes, absolutely. So all of the partner platforms that we work with accommodate investors that don't come from their own country. Okay, so it means that, for example, an investor that might be sitting in, let's call it somewhere in, the United States, for example, they can participate by registering as an overseas investor on any of the partner platforms. And all of that information, as I've said before, will be forthcoming very soon. So the simple answer to that question is yes. And again, that information will be shared along with how to register and some other details well in advance of the first deal investment window opening. Okay, so I've got another question here. Dacxi chain raising capital, what will the capital be used for? So look, this was something we covered off in the first deal presentation, but it's important. So I just wanted to revisit that. So the most important point here is that, you know, Dacxi chain doesn't live or die by virtue of the capital that we raise through this first deal, okay? But the important point here is that the capital that we do raise can be put to work to accelerate the business in a couple of important ways. One is on the business development or the sales and marketing side of the business. And that's really about growing the network by signing more and more equity crowdfunding partners into that network. Because with that growth in the number of participating partners, we get the compound growth effect or the network effect. And that's what drives the volume of transactions, and that's what drives the demand for Dacxi Coin, and that's what drives the value of Dacxi Coin. Okay, so that's one really important area where we want to run faster. And the second is on product development. So there's a long list of features and ideas that we've got that we'd like to build into the platform that we think will greatly increase its attractiveness and value over time, and in turn accelerate our ability to build that network and the network effect. And so we think that putting some of that capital to work in that area is also, really, there's a strong business case for that. And the reason why going faster, just to summarize, the reason why going faster is important is because we are the first to do this, and we want to build a beachhead. We want to build a moat around our proposition by signing as many platforms as quickly as we can to create scale and critical mass. And at that point, we have a clear, defendable position and a distinct market advantage, competitive advantage. Okay, so there's a number of reasons why going faster is very much in the best interests of the business. So hopefully that part of that is clear. We had another question here, which is, will the first deal be open to self-managed super funds or only individuals? Now somebody's got their speaker on, because I'm getting a big echo.
Wayne, can you please mute?
Okay. I'm still getting it.
Wayne?
Yeah, I've just put it off.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. So will self-managed super funds, so this is an Australia-specific question, this one, will self-managed super funds be able to invest in the first deal, or is it only individuals? The answer is yes. So self-managed super funds, you can invest through a company. There's a different registration process depending on which it is, but it's all very straightforward and simple. Okay, so the answer to that one is a definite yes. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving down the list here. I had a question asking about access to the technical data associated with Dacxi Chain, suggesting that this technical data ideally would be available to view, and that other crypto have their technical data available. So look, I'm not sure exactly what's meant by technical data, but I suspect it's the following. Whoever's asked this question, if they go to Etherscan, so it's etherscan.io, and they do a search on Dacxi, and then click on the search results. If you scroll down a little bit from that, there's a button called contract. And if you click on the contract, what it will show you is the contract source code and various other technical bits and pieces are available through Etherscan. So I think that will answer the question for anyone who wants to actually start reading lines of code. Then they're welcome to do that, and hopefully that answers the question. Okay, so I'll keep going through the list here. Another question about the roadmap. Are there any tier 1 exchange listings planned? And so again, this is something we talked about in previous presentations. I think both of the last two presentations. The answer is yes, absolutely. So the reason that somebody would ask about a tier 1 exchange listing is because that drives liquidity, and liquidity drives value, not just in our coin, but in all of the currencies that are cryptocurrencies that are traded on those tier 1 exchanges. So the thing to remember is that the the principal driver of the value of Dacxi Coin will be the growth in the network and the growth in the deals that flow through the network. And by deals, I just mean the opportunities, the different opportunities to invest in growth companies offered through all of the participants in the network. Okay, so that's going to drive the demand for the coin. Remember that every single investment that goes through our network drives demand for coin. Our primary use case for Dacxi Coin is as a transaction currency, where we're moving investments around the world. We're doing it very quickly. We're doing it very cheaply with a purpose-built transaction currency. But just keep in mind, it's not the only use case for Dacxi Coin. We have secondary use cases that we are very focused on, and they will be introduced in time. We haven't set any clear timeframes for these, but work is being done on these now. And those secondary use cases include things like our own blockchain, where it might be used to minimize and cover things like fees on our own blockchain. We've talked about that in the past, so that secondary use case hasn't changed. We've also talked about secondary markets, so using Dacxi Coin to facilitate transactions on a secondary market where tokens can be traded readily in the way that any cryptocurrency, for example, is traded today. And we've also talked about Dacxi Coin as potentially even becoming an investment currency, where people could use their Dacxi Coin to invest in one of these investment opportunities being offered through the Dacxi chain network. So those secondary use cases are really, really important. It's not just the primary use case that is the future of Dacxi Coin, and that's critical that everyone remembers that. As we sit here right now, the primary use case is our focus as we get into these first deals coming through the technology. Couple of other questions here. Somebody's asked, how many partners are we looking to sign in our rollout for the remainder of 2023 and then in 2024? So look, I've got some good news for everybody on this, which is that because we're doing an equity crowdfunding round through our own network, which, as we described in our last meeting, we think is the very best possible way to prove the value of the technology, is to put ourselves on the line on the first deal. Because we're doing that capital raising through our own network, it means that we actually have to share a lot of information about the company, including things like how many partners do we expect to sign over the next few years. So all of that information will be shared as part of the process of getting into position and sharing with interested parties such as yourselves everything that you would need to know to determine if you'd like to invest in Dacxi Chain through that first deal. Okay, so there's a lot of information, not just things like projections on the number of partners, but lots of other numbers, facts and figures. They're all shared openly as part of that process. Okay, so I'm sure many of you will be looking forward to seeing that. There's another question here about the geography that we're planning to roll out into. So are there specific countries that are preferred in the initial stages? And then it gives some examples: Brazil, America, Japan, etc. So look, again, we'll provide quite a bit of information in relation to this in the offer document, which will be published as part of the equity crowdfunding process. Okay, so everyone who's interested will have an opportunity to see that, and that will contain information such as the geographies that we want to prioritize in the next stage of our expansion. Okay. I've got a separate question here, which is essentially the same question about the goals for partners and the number of deals. So again, we're going to be sharing all that information. A question here about competition. Is there any competition that you're aware of? So look, I'll answer this in a couple of different parts. So I think if the ambition of any other organization is to create a global decentralized network, then the answer is no. We're not aware of, right now, we are not aware of any like-for-like competitors, none, okay? But we also think that there are some large standalone equity crowdfunding platforms that have ambitions to be in multiple markets, okay? So, you know, we can't stop them, and we're not really interested in preventing them from doing that. We have great confidence that the decentralized model gives us the fastest path to market. And the reason for that is that we're simply tapping into existing platforms that already have licenses, they're already regulated, they're already operating, they already have a crowd of investors, and they already have deal flow, okay? And we're simply plugging all that into a network that we provide the infrastructure to accommodate. If a standalone company wants to go and build a global network, then essentially what they have to do is launch in every single market that they decide has potential future value. Before they do that, they have to apply for and receive a license from a local regulator. This is not a trivial task, and it doesn't take 4 weeks. It's a long-term project, okay? They then have to build that business from scratch, including their investor base or the crowd. They then have to go and start marketing that crowd once they've got it to growth companies as an attractive option to raise capital. All of that takes time and takes an enormous amount of money, okay? So this is one of the refinements in our model about being a decentralized network, is it's a much more scalable, much faster path to market. And so whilst there are no direct competitors we're aware of offering what we're offering, we do think there might be some standalone equity crowdfunding companies that will have ambitions to be in multiple markets. And we also know that's going to be really hard and slow. So it just, again, underlines the value in us going as fast as we can in building our own network. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. There's another question here. Are partners going to enable crowdfunding using the Dacxi Coin for their current listed deal? So I think what this question is saying is if an investment opportunity or a deal is shared across the network, any investment that's captured would then drive demand for Dacxi Coin. So 100% of that investment would have a corresponding demand for Dacxi Coin. I think the question here is, what about deals that are on these platforms if they're not shared across the rest of the network? Could that also create demand for Dacxi Coin? And look, it's actually a very, very interesting question. And the answer is not right now. But we are looking at a whole range of scenarios. And I might add, not just necessarily equity crowdfunding, where there is demand for investment opportunities, and Dacxi Coin may play a role in tapping into those opportunities. So it's a great question. The answer is not right now, but it's one of the things that that we're looking closely at. We do see growth opportunity in these types of areas, and as we start to formulate any plans, then we'd start to think about sharing it more openly. Okay, so that's a particularly good question. I've got another question here, which was an interesting one. So somebody's obviously done some digging around. This is a good question. It says, was Dacxi removed from the Financial Markets Authority in New Zealand? And I think that's because they've gone and done a search, and they couldn't find Dacxi there. And the reason for that is that so first of all, the answer is no, it hasn't been. But don't forget, we changed the name of Dacxi across to Wealth 99 earlier this year. And so if you go and run that same search using Wealth 99, you will find that we are registered with the Financial Markets Authority. Okay, it's just a change of name. So hopefully that answers that question. So I'm just going through the list here. I want to make sure there's nothing I've missed in this first run. Okay. Oh, there's another one here. Has Dacxi Chain been approached, or have you approached any potential US partners? So that's a very good question. We are in contact with a growing number of really well-established, well-credentialed platforms all around the world, including the US. I was in the US late last year for what I believe is the world's largest equity crowdfunding conference or event, and I had the opportunity to meet with lots of equity crowdfunding platforms and founders and CEOs, which was tremendously useful. And I've stayed in contact with almost all of them. So we are in regular contact with a growing number of equity crowdfunding platforms. And have we been approached by US partners? Yes, we have. And all those discussions are really useful for us because it helps us understand which markets we should be prioritizing relative to their capacity and their interest and other considerations. So again, these types of things, a lot more will be revealed in the offer document that we publish to any interested investors as part of the equity crowdfunding round. So I'm quite confident that just the amount of information that's in that document, that any questions people have in relation to the geographies we want to target, the countries that we're interested in, the types of partners that we want to target, how many of them we expect to sign, how many deals is that going to generate, all of that information will be part of that offer document. Okay. So look, I think I've covered pretty much all of the key questions that are in this list, and I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to submit those questions in advance. It just makes it a much more sort of orderly process to try and get through these. There's a lot of other questions again that we've covered previously. There's always questions about Dacxi Coin price, and I think we've spoken very clearly in the last two presentations. I've touched on it again tonight. We've spoken clearly about what drives demand for Dacxi Coin. It is ultimately the building of the network and the growth in the volume of deal flow through the network, and that journey and that evolution of building the network and the deal flow will also make a tier 1 exchange listing extremely achievable for us. Whereas at the moment, it's taking longer than we'd like, and it's quite a complex process. That's all simplified greatly as we build the demand for the coin. So we have every expectation that will happen. Okay. So look, Felipe, I'm just conscious of time. We've gone over the 30 minutes. Is there anything else, Felipe, that you wanted me to cover?
Nope, that's pretty much it. That was awesome, actually. It's great to see our goals being addressed. So yeah, on behalf of the Dacxi Coin community, we just want to say a massive thank you for you being here and sharing your insights with us today. And please keep up with this amazing work, and let's keep rocking this journey together. Everyone, please remember to stay connected with us here on Telegram for the latest updates and upcoming events. And that's pretty much it.
That's great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Felipe.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye-bye.